Hey everyone, time for another roundup. So Bethesda have pulled the plug on Elder Scrolls Legends, a rather hubristic game. Halo's modding community is back with quite a bang. Battlefront 2 is not going anywhere, plus we've got Nintendo actually getting a good bit more evil with their gacha mechanics. Quite a fun show, be sure to like, sub, ring that bell, and let's get stuck in. Alright, so Bethesda have halted development of their card battler Elder Scrolls Legends, and they've confirmed that, any new content development or releases are on hold for the foreseeable future. That basically means dead. Now, there are going to be monthly rewards. The game still will be maintained, but no more expansions, and that means that the one mentioned last April is canned, and presumably the console versions of the game have met that very same fate. No reason was given for this, but I think it's fairly obvious. The game's always had a troubled existence. Last year, they actually fired the original devs at Dire World Digital, and they appointed Sparky Pants Studios, what a name. Now, at the time, they emphasized that they weren't unhappy with Dire Wolf's performance, but they felt like Elder Scrolls Legends had untapped potential. I mean, that's a pretty diplomatic way of putting it, and even if that is what they meant, well, it seems like it may not have had that potential after all. The game simply has not competed with Hearthstone and, of course, Magic the Gathering Arena, and then you've got Legends of Runeterra on the horizon, so you know what? I would not have fancied their chances either. Of course, this space is interesting because console Gwent was killed recently. Valve Artifact, it's in the bin. In the last 24 hours, its peak number of players was 174, which is pretty darn rough. And it's very interesting. I said hubristic earlier on because a lot of this just feels like companies saying, hey, we have an intellectual property, let's make a card game and get some money. Now, the thing about that is the actual entry point for a card game is sort of easy enough to do. I mean, take like our studio, right? Our lead artist, he's got 3 card games I think he's made in his spare time. Okay, like it would take a lot of work to actually make them into a full digital product, but you get the point, right? You do some design work, you do some quite simple art, and it's a very systemic thing that's easy to make content for. And I think that low barrier to entry has meant that a lot of companies have just sort of went in a half-hearted way thinking, yeah, the strength of our IP will carry us, maybe thinking that with Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft, it was the Warcraft that really made that successful. And I would say that the Warcraft got people's feet in the door, but the actual gameplay of Hearthstone is what kept them, especially in a time when that was a decently novel concept. Of course, it is that time no longer. There's a lot more competition. And if you look at, say, League of Legends or, Riot Games' Legends of Runeterra, I mean, it's pretty darn obvious. Look at TFT. New genre, did super well. It's inside the League client. Runeterra will have the exact same thing going for it. So it makes a lot of sense to just jump out of that market and not to throw more money into what I think clearly wouldn't really work that well. Alright, next up, let's do some really darn good news. So, as we recently covered, Halo Reach PC lets you turn off anti-cheat in order to use mods. Now, that's a great setup, and I actually came along with the promise of modding tools for Reach, ones just like the Gearbox Halo editor Evolved, which is really cool. Now, what's impressive to me, though, is the strength of the Halo modding scene right out the gate. You've got Halo Reach Evolved, that's one of the big ones. It's overhauling the game's campaign and firefight modes, bringing in just a lot more Halo sort of 1 through 3 feeling elements, plus a whole bunch of other changes, and a difficulty pass as well, even putting in, eventually the dual wielding system. And then moving past that, if you just go onto the Nexus, there's, reshades, character customization option, unlockers, title screen skips, the ultimate Forge world, and a whole bunch more. Like, it seriously is off to an incredible start. And that makes you wonder, why are they being so mod-friendly? What's going on here? Well, I think it's obvious enough, actually. They want to make Halo fans happy again, right? Halo 4 had its problems. Halo 5 had its problems, right? There was a bit more negative sentiment within the Halo community. I think over time, they didn't really do a great job of fostering that. The incredible thing about modding, though, is by making the tools and making the framework, you let the players build the engine of your IP's future success. That's the point. The players build it, they maintain it, keeps on going, and it just maintains engagement in your IP. Most importantly, it's doubling down on the super fans. The whole concept of, you'd rather have 1,000 good fans than a whole bunch more sort of fair weather ones. It's kind of like that for Halo, and really doubling down on modding allows that to happen. And I think that's really good for just getting that Halo brand identity back into a more healthy place, and also really blitzscaling that Halo PC community. Because here's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people who had Xboxes, loved Halo, now want to play Halo Reach in PC, fair enough. But there's a a lot of PC gamers who maybe don't have that context, but they're going to see things like modding support, and they're going to think, wow, that is a developer coming over here to our platform, and they're actually doing it right. Maybe I'll support them. And of course, with Microsoft Game Pass or Xbox Game Pass making it so darn cheap, really to me, this is the right move by gamers, and it's just going to give them fertile soil for Infinite. Okay, let's move on. Somewhat in spite of itself, Star Wars Battlefront 2 has actually earned a year 3, and a sneaky re-release of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 Celebration Edition, a re-release repackaging of the game. Now, the idea there is that after 2 years of content updates, they've decided to give Star Wars fans an easy way to access all that content. You know, easy way, also known as leveraging the game's free content updates to upsell faster content unlocks for some money, which, I mean, does make sense. They're a company, it's totally their right. So the Celebration Edition delivers you instant access to pretty much anything that can be unlocked with credits or crystals. That's skins, voice lines, emotes, etc. It's kind of similar to the Battlefield 5 Pacific re-release, and it's just sort of getting you caught up. Now, the access also covers an upcoming movie tie-in event content, which includes a new planet, new heroes coming in January, and this is coming for $40 or a $25 upgrade if you already own the game. And overall, I'd say this, it's good to see that they actually stuck with it, right? I think financial viability is important here, and if they're doing those content updates, they're not charging for them. Doing a rebox edition that gives you fast upgrades, yeah, that is a fair enough thing. It's totally within their right to do, and I don't actually think it's much of a greedy money grab. At the end of the day, the core content there is free. Now, that said, if you've been really sticking through that game, it may not feel great, but overall, I think a decent enough situation. Certainly it is interesting, because this is a game that released terribly. Battlefield 5, another DICE game that we covered in yesterday's video, released terribly. I've got to imagine that just morale over there at DICE had been really low, so it's good to see them having some wins. Though, of course, as I did cover yesterday, there is some unfortunate stuff going on with the Battlefield franchise. Then I suppose if I was to do one final bit of analysis here, EA are, of course, the people running this. What's another EA game? Anthem. We've recently covered Anthem having a lot of fundamental work being done to it, that they're basically just sort of battening down the hatches and getting to work and not really doing a massive amount for the current live game. So I imagine we'll probably see something there in a similar fashion at some point in the next year. Alright, next up, let's cover an old one. So Phoenix Point, that's a game that we covered months ago for its Kickstarter to Epic Store exclusive move. Well, it's released and to mixed responses. Now, the dev Snapshot had said the game would hit Xbox Game Pass PC at the same time as their Epic launch. But that's not happened, because so far, the Epic Game Store version is the only one that's live, and the dev Snapshot have openly admitted that they, quote, dropped the ball on their other versions. Snapshot staffer Kevin Hill outlined that the delay is basically down to Microsoft's certification process, and the Snapshot team's lack of experience in actually dealing with that process with the Windows Store and with Game Pass. Basically, they said the complexity of the certification and legal review processes just surprised them, and Hill openly admitted that they simply did not properly prepare the groundwork to actually get the game released on time on those other platforms. Now, basically, the team said they have no idea really when the other versions will be available, and that essentially does make Phoenix Point an Epic Game Store exclusive, and that's not gone down well at all, especially considering how burnt some of the Kickstarter backers will have actually felt about that Epic move. Now, that Epic move, well, that did fund future content development, but laying the groundworks for something like new certification processes or new systems needed for the other storefronts, I mean, that's less of a throw money at the problem solution, and that's more of a you should have actually worked on that in the past, so that'll probably just take some time. Overall, I would say the Snapshot probably did not want this to happen. I don't think this is a malintent thing. I think this is just a little bit of incompetency from not having done it before. So I pretty much think that's what's going on there. Overall, a pretty unfortunate situation. Next, though, a quick update. So remember the Starbreeze story, right? Well, the Stockholm District Court has now approved their proposed credit repayment plan, and that now means they can look to their future. So they've sold the publishing rights to Psychonauts 2 and to System Shock 3. They've done that to keep their heads above water, and their next priority is reaching a publishing agreement for a new Payday title in 2020. So pretty rough spot for them, and that's basically how they've managed to get through it. Next, though, I think we've got some really darn good news in the realms of actual video games that are great that you can play. Last week, remastered versions of Bayonetta and Vanquish were leaked via the Microsoft Store, and this week, those listings were updated to include a snazzy new trailer. Now, the games are available separately or as a special 10th anniversary bundle, and of course, the really good news here is they're apparently boasting 4K graphics and 60 FPS support, so they'll probably be in far better state. They're both fantastic games. I would recommend giving them a shot, but, just be sure not to play Vanquish like a Western cover shooter. Next, though, Nintendo. So Mario Kart Tour is gacha as hell. More than half of the characters in the game are now locked behind that random drop mechanic. And, this is a kid-focused IP from Nintendo. Mario Kart Tour has got two ways to unlock characters, via the shop with coins earned for free by doing races, or via the gacha pipe with rubies. Now, small amounts of those rubies can be obtained for free, and then larger quantities, of course, can be purchased with your real money, and then some are also included in their monthly Gold Pass subscription. Now, the kicker here, and where you really see the doubling down, is that this past month, new shop content has been quite rare, and the majority of new content, so your characters and your carts, that's been added to the gacha pipe. Now, these new items have got like super low drop rates, like 0.5% in some cases, so yeah, you can either play the gacha lottery, or you can just drop $20 to $40 on a character-specific bundle. And it's this simple. Gacha monetizes incredibly well, and it basically is a form of gambling, right? It's not gambling for currency you can spend, but emotionally, like within the emotional context of the person putting money into that gacha pipe, yeah, they're gambling some currency in the hope of, in a non-skill-based fashion, some stuff at the end. And really, I think you see it work so well with these franchises where people have got an emotional attachment to those characters. And with something like Mario, or of course, with Pokemon Masters, you're absolutely going to see that happen. And at the end of the day, the sad fact is, you could make a really good quality game and you could charge people some money for it, or you can make a gacha hellscape like this, and yeah, you could just charge someone $30 for a character bundle, and you know what? That's actually going to happen. And it really is pretty darn crazy, and it's pretty grim if you're saying, an indie dev who wants to do well and you're seeing those things happen, or if you're even a AAA dev and you're seeing, we want to make this $60 game, but here's this, shitty mobile game that's just getting hundreds and hundreds of dollars from players. It's a pretty sad state of affairs overall. And really for me, the future is kind of grim. I talked about the data-driven decision-making earlier on and how that's inherently a problem for core audiences. We're just going to see that here, where you just get a bit, just outweighed by the sheer numbers that come from the people who do participate in those systems. And then finally, the Nintendo Switch is finally launching in China this week. That is, of course, thanks to a partnership with Tencent. Now, getting consoles into China, that's always been a real tricky situation. It's like mostly a PC and mobile market. And with only a single game in the eShop at launch, oddly enough, they're hardly coming out all guns blazing, but this move is clearly a good one for the business to send their stock up, and it likely is being seen as just sowing the seeds of future financial success. And of course, that stock price is always going to be thinking about future growth, so it does make a decent amount of sense. Anyway, there you go. That is it for today's episode of The Roundup. Overall, interesting stories. You know what? With Halo, Bayonetta, and Vanquish, we have good news in the realm of actual video games you can play. And I suppose with Battlefront as well. Now, as for the card games, yeah. Turns out there was a bandwagon, a whole bunch of people jumped on it, and those who didn't do that good of a job, well, they have now jumped off the bandwagon. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you very much for watching today's episode. Be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell. And with that, I'll see you next time.